about time I revisit a subject of one of my negative countdowns from 2 years ago. The top 15 worst cliches in video games. Only this time, it'll just be top 15 things I hate, since they're not always really cliches, but they have to be intended. As you all know, there are things in video games that we love, and things that we hate. Some of them have spread to multiple different video games and make us sick whenever they pop up. I know some people have already made these kinds of lists, but I feel like there are some that no one has mentioned yet. With that said, let's get started. Some areas in video games are a lot of fun to experience, but what happens when they block off these areas? Then you can't go back to them. This is really a shame because of how much fun these areas can be, and because it can ruin your chances of beating the game 100%. Sometimes completing everything in the game is half the fun of playing it. And this will be your worst enemy here. Now if there's not much to them, it's not that bad, like in Super Metroid Space Colony, but otherwise I can't stand this. The worst times are where they block off the whole overworld once you get to the final stretch, like in Star Fox Adventures where General Pepper locks your coordinates on the Krazoa Palace, or in Super Metroid. Why had a game that handles this the right way in the beginning end with one of the worst times of this? Because of this, I had to start the game back from the beginning if I want 100%. Why couldn't it be like in other games I played where they have the save point before the point of no return? It's not that hard to think of doing it like that. But even if it doesn't block off the rest of the game, that doesn't keep this trope from being bad. With the drastic amount of improvements video games have made over their predecessors, it makes me question why modern games don't get enough credit. That being said, one flaw with games that has gotten more prominent is that sometimes sections rely on gyroscope controls, especially in games on current Nintendo systems. Do these guys know how clunky gyroscope controls can be at times? I mean, tilting the gamepad or 3DS to control your movement? It sounds like a cool concept on paper, but it really isn't. Because it's a lot harder to input the commands than with the regular controls, especially if you're in the car. Not all games have this annoyance, but when it shows up, it'll make you groan. There are excusable times, like if the camera is optional and can easily be fixed in settings, or in Kirby Triple Deluxe where it's usually used to solve certain puzzles and there's almost never any real penalty for failure, and sometimes the controls are actually not that bad once you get used to them. As long as you're not on a plane or in a car or anything. But in other instances, you won't be so lucky. Gyroscope controls are almost always really bad, and they almost never accomplish anything. If you're a racing game fan, you'll almost definitely have to deal with Rubber Band AI. I'm pretty sure that most of you know what it is, but I'm just gonna say it anyways, just in case you don't know. This is where it becomes easier for the players who are in last place, and becomes harder for the ones in first. Computer players get faster when they're in last, but slower in first. To add to that, in games with power-ups, the worse you're doing, the better item you'll get. This is apparently meant to balance out the game to make it fair. It doesn't. In fact, it completely destroys the purpose of a fair race. It feels less like a race and more like the game doing everything in its power to make you fail, especially since there are items that punish the person in first place. You can get sent from first to like 6th in like not even a quarter of a minute. So let me ask you this question once again. How exactly is this a fair race? Turns out, gyroscope controls aren't the only thing that modern games do wrong. The next problem here comes in the form of hand-holding. If you want to know what I mean, it's when you die enough times, the game will outright help you get through a level. Sounds like a pretty generous thing, but this is almost never handled correctly. I know they're meant to appeal to a younger audience, and not all games are meant to be a challenge, but sometimes it feels like they're mocking me rather than actually trying to help. Especially in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, if you die too many times at a point, it'll give you a block which will activate the Super Guide and show you how they'll get through the level. I wouldn't mind this, but it makes a really annoying ringing sound. Is that really necessary? Like I said, it literally feels like the game is mocking me. Intention or not, there's no excuse. Even if you do eventually master the level without the Super Guide, it doesn't go away. It stays in that part of the level for the rest of the game. In Yoshi's Woolly World, This comes in the form of giving you the option to switch to mellow mode, which grants you immunity from death, no matter how many times you say no. If I keep saying no for the first 100 times you ask me, what makes you think I'll say yes to bazillions? But the worst one is in Sonic Lost World. If you lose enough lives, they'll give you the opportunity to skip part of the level. So if you're on one of those grind rail levels, you'll be more likely to accidentally slide or jump into one of the wing power-ups when you weren't even meaning to. I can at least excuse it in some instances, like in some Crash Bandicoot games where they give you an Aku Aku mask so you can take an additional hit. That gives you help without ruining the challenge. And I'll give this one thing. Doing this without annoying the adults is not easy to do. Yes, let's think about the kids who are having trouble with the game, but we should think about the adults playing too. After years of a franchise creating games different from their normal style, that franchise will spawn a lot of people that will beg them to bring them back to their roots. If they do, they bring back a lot of memories. The problem with that, however, is because sometimes they emphasize on this way too much. Even in the good games, sometimes it feels like they care more about reminiscing the classics than actually making a good game. And I'm not just talking about entire games based on this, I'm also talking about certain elements from games. One problem is that nearly every cave theme in the Mario series are, or at least contain, the original underground theme from the first Super Mario Bros. It has more remixes than Wily Stage 1 from Mega Man 2, and I am sick and tired of the flagpole being the goal in every single classic Mario game. I'm not kidding. It's been the goal in 7 games, not counting Mario Maker. Why can't they try something original like Super Mario Bros. 3 did? And please, Nintendo, stop having Peach get kidnapped! To me, this makes the throwbacks feel less and less nostalgic. Even Pokemon Go to a certain extent. Even though Pokemon Go is a good game, will they ever bring in Generation 2 Pokemon? Once again, I love nostalgic throwbacks, but when they spend too much time with these, then it gets really tiresome. Alright, I got more lives than Nightmare in Dreamland. I'm ready to take on level 7 too. Now for a good night's sleep.
Tomorrow.
Take that, you bullies! I may have lost a life here, but there's plenty more. Wait a minute. What did you do to me? Yeah, I think you know where I'm going with this. Situations where games just reset all your lives back to the default life count whenever you quit the game is something that does not need to exist. All this does is make all your hard work and life grinding go to waste. Some can argue that this keeps the game from being way too easy. Well, what about those scenarios where you're going to need all of those lives? Especially Mario Galaxy 2 with the prankster comments. Because it will send you back to the Starship Mario every time you get game over. You won't be able to grind on more lives without turning your system off and putting your system at risk of overheating. These types of games need to understand that resetting your lives does not equate to good design. Even Super Mario Galaxy, which is arguably my favorite game, isn't immune to this either. Do you know how many times I've had to restart a level because of the game repeatedly taking away all my hard-earned lives? More than I could count. I can tolerate mazes. If they at least feel fair, they're pretty good, especially if they have maps. But one form of maze that makes me facepalm is when there are these types of levels that consist of similar rooms with multiple exits, and one is the right way while the others either make you start over or lead you to a dead end. This comes off as fake difficulty and a waste of time. Almost every Zelda game has one of these. Some handle these right, like the Ocarina of Time Lost Woods, because they have charm and you can see the doorways to see which is the right way. Others, well, the Lost Woods and Twilight Princess can take much longer and don't have much charm. The Room of Rights, where this kind of puzzle doesn't really work when you're trying to build up to a final boss, or even in the original Zelda. While I've memorized the order you need to go, back in the days, how is anyone supposed to know to go without internet walkthroughs? The Lost Mountains are easily solved just by walking north 4 times. Question, if you need to go in the same direction 4 times, why not just save time and, I don't know, let's go into the 5th dungeon when you first go north? But the worst offender of this is in Super Paper Mario. Nearly every world in the game has at least one of those types of levels. They've taken me hours just to get through them. The worst one by far is the final level. Because the scenery in Chapter 8 is all black with white lines, this makes this section even more outrageous because you'll be running like mad through the rooms, having to flip to 3D in order to get through here, which punishes you if you're in 3D for too long, and they give no hint of where the heck you're supposed to go. If it doesn't take too long to find out where you're supposed to go, then I guess it's okay. But most of the time, the only reason for existing is to pad out the game. There are ways to add tension to the gameplay, by giving a time limit that gives you plenty of time, making the opponent have brute strength without too many cheap deaths, or more ways. These are ways you can handle this correctly. Making us have to do rapid input sequences is not the way to handle this. This does nothing but give us massive pains to our hands, or worse, our lungs in some DS games where you have to blow into the mic. Your lungs will feel like they're turning inside out. But even when you have to use your fingers, it'll hurt too. The Mario Party series are infested with rapid input sequences. We all know about games like Tug of War and Paddle Battle where you have to rotate the control stick, but another problem is that it's 3 against 1 doing the same thing, giving the team of 3 the advantage. But the worst rapid input minigame for me is Slime Time. The rate you have to pound your thumb on the button in order to survive is worse than you can possibly imagine here, so you have to hit the button like 10 times per second. What were they smoking when they came up with this minigame? I can handle it if it doesn't make you tap the button as much, but other times you'll be left steaming. There are better ways to make the gameplay feel more intense, and this is not how you do it. Getting back to the scenario of fair challenges, luck-based events are even worse than Rubber Band AI in terms of fake difficulty. At least Rubber Band AI had some skill drawn into it, while luck-based events can brutally punish you for what isn't even your fault. In Pokemon Go, even though it's stated earlier as a good game, they give no indication when a Pokemon's gonna block your Pokeball. Mario Party is guilty of this, but the worst Mario Party minigames in my opinion are Bowser's Big Blast and Bowser's Bigger Blast. Because Big Blast was the one that cursed the Mario Party series with this, and Mario Party 4's bomb looks even dumber, and it takes longer to explode. There's one excusable exception. Mario Party 9, despite having a lot of annoying instances of this, handles this beautifully in the final fight. How? Because even though you have to roll dice to attack, if you get one wrong, you can roll it again until it has your face on it. And if you roll a Bowser and allow him to attack, you can still dodge them. I just wish that more luck-based events would be like this. Voice acting is something that I love in video games. When characters say phrases in battle, that makes this even more interesting. The problem, however, is when they constantly repeat these lines. I think these lines should only be restricted to once every few minutes instead of every single time they use an attack. Let me introduce you to one of the worst times. Metroid Other M, which is literally the worst game over screen ever made.
Samus, what's going on? Respond! Respond! Samus, what's going on? Respond! Respond!
Shut up! Why do I hate this so much if it's not gameplay related? First off, it doesn't have to affect gameplay to ruin the experience. Second off, I do have an example where this can affect gameplay. In Frostman's stage of Mega Man 8, during the sled sections, these stupid signs pop up and tell you that you need to jump or slide, and their voices sound like someone's tearing my brain open. I am perfectly capable of seeing what's ahead of me. If anything, this only distracts me and has actually caused me to die sometimes. I literally had to hit the mute button at these sections in order to get past them. Like I said, if this was limited to only one time every few minutes, it wouldn't be that bad. But sometimes they repeat these lines every 10 seconds, making me despise it with a passion. Tutorials are pretty much needed in some video games because they're a way to teach you what you need to do in order to play the game. But when the game literally forces them on you, I just can't stand it. This is a problem in many RPGs, especially in the Mario RPGs and Pokemon games. I mean, come on! I've known the basic tutorials ever since Superstar Saga. The least you could do is give me an option if I want to hear it or not. There's another way that some games spend so much time appealing to kids that they forget about how it can appeal to adults. Because what can be a friendly tutorial for some can be a huge delay for others. I just want to get on with the adventure. You know what I like about some 3D platformers? Because they give you signs to read that give you the directions, so that makes this more tolerable, so that if you want a hint, just walk up to the sign. And in some Unreal shooters like the Kid Icarus Uprising and the Star Fox games, they tell you this stuff without interrupting the gameplay and even give you a training mode that you don't have to go to. So I guess we can be happy knowing that Star Fox Zero will also handle this the right way. Are you kidding me? Fetch quests are a part of the game in which their fun factor depends on how they're presented. Trading sequences, grinding missions, wait, what? Yes, grinding missions. The types of fetch quests that you have to keep running between areas to bring back items. Conker's Bad Fur Day has way too many of these. I may not have played it, but I've seen Nintendo Capri Sun's Let's Play of it. Aside from me finding the jokes horribly unfunny and cringeworthy, the villain, who you don't even get to fight by the way, being just your generic everyday evil king of a seemingly happy fairy tale land villain, the grinding missions include bringing cogs through an underwater section to power the door, repeatedly bringing back cheese to a stupid rat who I swear must be taking advantage of you, and bringing back angry villagers to throw them into a meat grinder, which, once again, I don't think is funny at all. I can't really say the game is bad because I haven't played it, but judging by the ones I have experienced, I wouldn't say it's worth spending my money on life on. In Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, every 20 minutes or so of your adventure will come to a screeching halt and tell you that you need to play these annoying Paper Toad missions, which are annoying to catch, because they just won't stand still, because they're so blind and have such puny brains that these dunces honestly mistook you for Bowser's minions. And the fact that you have to store them in your pockets is just disturbing. In Kingdom Hearts 2, you'll have to keep playing the same minigames over and over again until you earn enough money, and in the end, all that turns out to be pointless because Square Enix loves watching Roxas suffer as his friends blame him for everything. And don't even get me started on the hard labor section in Super Paper Mario. Now bear with me. This isn't always bad. There are two things that can make it more tolerable. One, if you can get them all at once instead of one at a time. And two, and most importantly of all, if they're not required to beating the game. Both examples can be used in some collectathons like in Toy Story 2 PlayStation or SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. But in most situations, I really want to have a talk with whoever came up with this. Imagine how you'll feel when you're playing through a game and are really excited to fight the final boss, but then all of a sudden, you find out that you have to go back to the rest of the overworld in order to get pointless collectibles. In all three of the Metroid Prime games, the final area of the game can't be accessed until you backtrack to the rest of the overworld in order to acquire these items. In Prime, you need the Chozo artifacts, in Echoes you need the Sky Temple keys, and in Corruption it's not as bad since you don't need all the energy cells and you do access more parts of the Valhalla as you collect them. But this is still a chore. Marking the location on the map would have been nice. In Pac-Man World, in order to reach Tockman, you must go back and get the keys, and then rescue your friends. But because each key can open any of the cages, it's really hard to remember what key you got and what key you haven't got. Especially since they don't tell you what friends you saved, so you either have to keep track of it, or have the memory of an elephant. When video games do this, it serves no purpose other than to ruin the dramatic build-up. I just want to get to the finale already and enjoy the epic climax. Do we really need to stall it out further? Now, to be honest, in games where you need to collect more stuff like stars, shine sprites, etc. in order to access certain levels, then I guess it's not that bad because that's what you've been doing throughout the whole game and it's not that repetitive. Except for in Hideout Helm of Donkey Kong 64. They just had to make you go back and get the Nintendo and Rareware coin, which you can only get by playing certain arcade games, not to mention all the crowns. And since the levels in Donkey Kong 64 are very expansive, it'll be even harder to find these crowns. So why does this stupid cliche exist? As some of you know, I love different environments in video games. It gives a lot of variety and contrast. But this doesn't always work for the better, especially if we're talking about dark levels. I don't care if they're supposed to add some contrast. It's not worth hindering the player. You have to run into dead ends repeatedly to get anywhere and barely be able to see anything, especially if you're in somewhere like the Hollow Bastion basement, combined with the fact that you run against the walls with the lack of a map and you have a miserable time. But even if you do have one, it can be hard to tell where to jump or not because some maps don't even show the elevation. Now, to their credit, on more advanced TVs these levels might be perfectly lit, but I don't want to have to pay a fortune just to make a level better. Are there excusable times? Yes. One being in Fire Emblem Revelations. Chapter 7 is actually a very fun chapter thanks to this, because while the areas light up while you're progressing, the areas you've been to stay lit. Or in the Luigi's Mansion games, where it can't really cause you to die since the ghosts are lit up, but unfortunately, I can't think of many other times where the darkness helps the experience. So, after you've finished grinding up on a lot of levels, you've opened up a lot of treasure chests and found many rare items, you feel good about yourself. And then you die. And assuming that it's a game where you can't save in any area you want, you find out that everything you did since the last save point was wasted. Ladies and gentlemen, losing progress whenever you get a game over. I was way too nice on my original list. It should have been number 1. Because while dark levels can at least sometimes be fun, there's nothing you would consider fun about being forced to redo everything you've worked for. Don't give me the challenge excuse, because that doesn't work anymore. All it does is make you redo teeth-grinding challenges you've already gotten past. I'd probably forgive this if you could save at any point, but I've almost never seen any times where a game both erases your progress once you get game over, and lets you save anywhere you want in the same game. Getting past it once should be enough. Now having to progress through it every single time you die is way too much, especially when the save points are like 10 miles apart from each other. Whether they needed a way to punish you for losing or not, this is way too harsh. There's a key difference between challenge and tedious. Bottom line, losing progress when you get game over is terrible, unnecessary, frustrating, only adds fake difficulty, and is one of the most repetitive things in the world. Stealing its spot is my number 1 most hated thing in video games.